Ladies and gentlemen, this next segment of the podcast is brought to you by the Heritage Foundation. For over 50 years, the Heritage Foundation has been America's outpost in Washington, fighting against the D.C. federal bureaucracy and working to secure a future that allows Americans to flourish. You see, for too long, conservative principles have been ignored by many of the very leaders claiming to fight for America. But the Heritage Foundation is proud to hold our leaders accountable and stand up for America's founding principles, paid for by the Heritage Foundation.
He's here. He's here. Now, broadcasting from the underground command post, deep in the bowels of a hidden bunker, somewhere under the brick and steel of a nondescript building, we've once again made contact with our leader, Mark Levin.
Mark Levin here. Our number, 877-381-3811, 877-381-3811. Shoosh. Busy weekend for all of America, for the president, for the Prime Minister of Israel, for the media, most of it fake. And we'll have plenty of time to get into that, and many domestic issues too, but before we do, every couple of years, not because I have to, because I want to, I decide to sit down and write a book. You know, books, or whether you use the audio version or what have you, they last long beyond a radio show or a TV show or a podcast or any of the sort. They just do. And a book provides an opportunity for the writer to express things and research things that it's impossible to do on a radio or television show. Now, there's different things that you can express and explain in real time on a radio and a television show or a podcast. But when you write a book, if you write a good book, if you write a book that's going to be lasting, that's not just a quick hit and grift and so forth, it doesn't work that way. Writing a book is very solitary. And I've told you before, when I write a book, I think of you. That is, what you might be interested in, what I feel maybe you should know. It's a completely different format. It's a completely different approach. Now, everybody's brain is complicated. It kicks into gear one way when you're at home and you're relaxed. It kicks into gear another way when you're at work. Kicks into gear yet a different way when you're, let's say, going to school or reading books, as an example. It's the way it is. People are not one-dimensional. They're multidimensional. You're multidimensional. Whatever you do, it doesn't matter. You're multidimensional. And you know what I mean. So I've written... You know what? I didn't even count. I think 10 books I've written. 10 books. On a myriad of subjects. First book I ever wrote was about the Supreme Court, Men in Black. I didn't want to call it Men in Black. The publisher at the time, Regnery, insisted on it. I said, well, that's the name of a movie. But Men in Black, even though Sandra Day O'Connor was on the court, and last time I understood she was a woman. I wanted to call it Judicial Tyranny, but it didn't matter. Was the same thing. The next book I wrote, I didn't intend to write, was called Rescuing Sprite, about our wonderful dog and dogs and the event of having to put him to sleep and the impact it had on our family. And the third book I wrote turned out to be a blockbuster, Liberty and Tyranny. It was a book I wanted to write for 20 years. And it came out simultaneously with the Tea Party movement. One fueled the other. I won't go down the long list. The last book I wrote, of course, is The Democrat Party Hates America. It's the longest book I've ever written. Almost 100,000 words, give or take. But the book before that, during the pandemic, was called American Marxism, a very, very important book, which sold almost 1.4 million copies. You know, it's very interesting. The publishing industry is very flat right now. Very flat. Fewer and fewer people want to read. The audio element of books is doing quite well. People are in their cars or you're busy. Maybe you have to go to something that bores you and you put the plugs in your ears and you listen. Or you have a long drive during the holiday. Myself, I like to have a book. A hardback book. That's just me. I got to thinking. I've written books about liberty. I've written books about philosophy. One overlaps the other, as they must. Really, they're books that flow seriatim, intentionally so. So if you put aside the first two books, Men in Black and Rescuing Sprite, all the other books sort of fit like a puzzle. As I said, the last book was The Democrat Party Hates America. Now, there was a boycott of the book at several retail outlets, and that's too bad, because it's everything you ever wanted to know about the Democrat Party. But I got to thinking. And when I get to thinking, I keep a little pad here and there, and I write little notes to myself. I got to thinking. You and I together, we've explored liberty. We've explored unalienable rights. But as I got to thinking, I realized this is crucially important, liberty and unalienable rights. That's our declaration. For many people, that's our faith. But when I write about liberty and when I write about unalienable rights, I often have to talk about tyranny. Crucially important, again. Liberty, rights, and tyranny. And I've talked around another subject, I realized, over the decades. I've written around this subject, I realized, over the decades. And those of you who listen to this program and have a very keen ear will probably know what I'm talking about. Those of you who watch Life, Liberty, and Levin, or our Blaze digital program, will probably know what I'm talking about. It's a word, it's a subject that each and every one of you have to deal with each and every day. It's a matter that can be discussed psychologically, ideologically, philosophically, and in the context of the civil society, the context of politics and government. What is this word? It's power. Power. And so the book is called On Power. On Power. And I think it's going to be very fascinating and intriguing to many, many, many of you who listen to this program. I broke it into 6 basic chapters, and I decided to write this book a little differently. It's the most concise book I've ever written, which means it was much harder to write. It has the least amount of second party or third party quotes in it, even though there are some in there, because I want to always give credit to sources if I got an idea or thought from another source. I believe that's the ethical and moral thing to do. But there's not hundreds of endnotes. I spoke to the publisher and I said, I want the book to be more compact, easier to carry, put in a purse, put in a glove compartment, so we did that. I said, I want the book to be under $28 because $28, $30, $32 is what everybody's charging for books. I said, I don't want to do that. So it's $26.99. The hardcover. You'll be able to get audio too, if you wish. And I said, I want the cover to be basic, like a classic old school cover. And that's what it is. And when I write a book, I throw everything I can into the book. You know, when I wrote American Marxism, that was a extremely difficult book to write. And so you know, and I'll get into the substance in a minute. I'm not allowed to tell you all about the substance, but I always kind of diss the publisher and give you more information than I'm supposed to, and I'm going to do that tonight and in some of the preceding weeks. What happens, I write the book. I write it not 14 times, I write it once. I don't outline it except when I start writing it, then I have my thoughts, then I outline the chapters as I go along. And I want to make sure one paragraph integrates with the next, one chapter integrates with the next, and so you have a book that makes some sense. And those of us who are authors, the process is you write it, then you send it to the publisher, and they have two types of editors. A book editor, who looks at it, reads it, makes suggestions, has thoughts, says you might want to think about this or that. I have a wonderful editor. And then you have copy editors. You know, go through, maybe you should capitalize this, and maybe you should put it in present tense rather than past tense. So after you write, it goes through all that. And it goes through 3 or 4 rounds of that. And I'll tell you as an example footnote, in American Marxism, there's a group called the Frankfurt Institute, a communist group that was in Berlin. And the Frankfurt Institute is mentioned many times in American Marxism, and once it's called the Franklin Institute. Apparently one of the copy editors changed it, but the book is, you know, I don't read it over and over and over and over again. I didn't catch that. And so you'll have critics who don't accomplish very much, who spend a lot of time on the internet. And their idea of criticizing somebody is attacking them rather than on a substantive and intellectual and scholarly level. And so like last week, one of them from a magazine called The American Conservative, which is nothing but a sort of a Huey Long kind of thuggish magazine with mostly Neanderthals who spew the same stuff. And this guy, who looks like he walked into a propeller. Yeah, but Mark Levin said Franklin Institute. What kind of scholar is he? He says Franklin. Look, if you don't put your chin out there, if you don't put your neck out there, if you don't do things, then you're never going to be criticized. But if you do, then you'll be attacked. It's the nature of the beast. It's okay. It's okay. This book is very different than any other book I've ever written. It is very readable, and yet much of it is my own independent thinking and reasoning and trying to understand this word power. And so the first chapter is called On Power. The second chapter is called Negative Power. So to the best of my knowledge, I've created this idea of negative power, and I express what that means in a full chapter. Followed by, of course, the third chapter is on positive power. What does that mean? The fourth chapter is on language, positive language and negative language. The fifth chapter is on rights. And the last chapter is on liberty. So power, negative power, positive power, language, rights, liberty. And you're thinking, you're in the car, maybe you're sitting at the dinner table, and you say, what the hell does this have to do with me? It has everything to do with you. And that's why I picked this topic after thinking about it. It has everything to do with you. This is what determines if you're free or you're enslaved. If you have liberty or not. So I want to delve into it just a little bit when we come back, more than my publisher would want me to. And just so you're aware, a couple hours ago, it's quote-unquote, it populated on Amazon, meaning the site for the book and the information, it's all now on Amazon.com. It's also on most of the other retailers' sites as well. It takes a significant process to do this, apparently. The audio isn't up there yet, but it'll be up there in the next 24 hours. But the Kindle is the hardback copy. So I want to talk about it. You can check it out on your own. We've linked to it on every single one of our platforms and on the mother site, marklevinshow.com, to make it as easy as possible for you to take a look. As easy as possible to take a look. And when you pre-order a book, that means, depending how early you pre-order, you're the first to get the book when it comes out. It lands on your doorstep the moment it is released in the order of the people who order it. And you'll get substantial discounts that aren't showing right now. But during the course of the next few months before it's released on July 29, if it's a 35, 40, 49%, you'll get that deduction. But I want to get into the substance a little bit when we come back. We'll be right back.
Mark Levin.
Folks, the first 100-plus days of the Trump presidency has been astonishing, and the Heritage Foundation has been keeping track. Americans were sick and tired of the status quo in Washington, D.C., and that had led to a border crisis and an erosion of family life in America. They sent President Trump back to Washington with a mandate to restore American greatness. And the good news is that America's back. Now, if you want to see exactly how he did it, go to heritage.org/Levin. That's heritage.org/Levin. To get your free list of Trump's 100 wins in 100 days. The Heritage Foundation has been counting wins in the first 100 days since President Trump's new administration took office. And I'm sure you can name many of those wins, from taking steps to secure our border to cutting government waste. But the Heritage Foundation has a comprehensive list of the top 100 wins so far. So go to heritage.org/Levin and get your list. That's heritage.org/Levin. Paid for by the Heritage Foundation. This is a very short segment, so we'll pick it up after the break. But, you know, there's a little bit of a nerd in me. I get excited about this sort of thing. I get excited when I have these ideas. I get excited when I think things through, and I feel like I have a very interesting take. I look at the great philosophers going back hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years. I don't pretend to be anything like them. Wish I were. But I have my own take and my own view of these things. And then I try to apply them in a way that makes sense and that might intrigue you or interest you. This issue, On Power, that's the name of the book on Amazon, On Power, is something that is ubiquitous. It surrounds us. We exercise it, or it's exercised against us, particularly by politicians and the media and the government, all throughout our culture. This book is not about psychology, but it involves psychology. And I thought it's time that we have an open national discussion about this. I'll be right back. Folks, if you're like me, you've been closely watching President Trump's first 100 days, watching as he fulfills his campaign promises and the mandate he was given by the American people. And I'm happy to report that the Heritage Foundation identified 100 of President Trump's biggest wins for Americans in his first 100 days in office. Now, if you go to heritage.org/Levin today, that's heritage.org/Levin, you can get your free copy of the Heritage Foundation's list of Trump's 100 wins in 100 days. Everyone knows some of what he's done, from securing the border to protecting women and girls in sports. But you have to see the full list of what his administration has accomplished in only 100 days. It's truly astonishing. I've seen this list. You need to go see it too. Go to heritage.org/Levin, heritage.org/Levin. Get your free copy of 100 wins in 100 days. That's heritage.org/Levin. Paid for by the Heritage Foundation.
Liberty's voice, Mark Levin. Talk with that voice now. 877-381-3811.
You know, ladies and gentlemen, I have to confess before I proceed here that I do get paid to write a book. I don't have to write a book, but I don't write a book to get paid. I could retire from radio, TV, Blaze, and book writing right this moment and have, with my wife and family, a very, very full retirement. I don't do any of this for money. I don't have to. That's not to brag. That's to explain that when I do this, my motivations have nothing to do with that. My motivations have to do with exploring who we are, exploring what it means to have the best of the civil societies, to have a full life of liberty and opportunity, to think about these things and to share them with you. So the practical impact is to affect our communities, our neighborhoods, our body politic. You and I together have had an enormous impact in 20 years on this country. Doesn't mean we can save it. Doesn't mean we can't. But together, whether it was the Tea Party or other movements, and even with Donald Trump, there are people out there who praise themselves and pat themselves on the head, self-aggrandizers. But you did it. You did it. And we still have skeptics who admire mine, who listen to this show, may not be Donald Trump fans. I understand. Now, what's interesting about this book, it's not about current events, but it applies current events from time to time. This isn't paint by the numbers. This isn't some ghostwriter writing this. This is me. Now, I start the book off explaining what I'm doing. In the very first chapter, many have written about and debated the issue of power, including the ancients and modern philosophers and scholars and statesmen alike. Why? Because power determines your social arrangements, quality of life, and more to the point of this book, whether you are free or enslaved or some degree of either. In short, it determines your personal fate, the fate of your community, the fate of a nation. There are infinite ways to view power, innumerable contexts and circumstances to apply it. There's truly no simple, concise, all-purpose definition for what is meant by power. Now, let's stop that. Think about that. Give it a shot. What would the all-purpose, concise definition of power be? For that matter, liberty. For that matter, rights. And I explore all three in what I think will be a fascinating journey. It was for me, and I think it will be for you, but you're going to learn so much. Clearly, however, power is more than a word. To spend time thinking, talking, or writing about it is not a mere abstraction, a useless amorphism, or an elitist esotericism. It is a term that is meant to describe some kind of force or energy that surrounds us all the time, is both ubiquitous in your life, the life of the entire society, and consequential in every way. Indeed, power is a core reality and characteristic of human existence. By the way, if you hear me slowing down when I read a little bit or not, I didn't bring my magnifying glass, so I'm reading as best I can on the fonts here. Yet without more, such as context and circumstance, power can be ambiguous and elusive. In all human pursuits, including personal pursuits and life events, power matters. At a macro level, power shapes economies, politics, and governments. Moreover, there are many variations of power: applied powers, necessary powers, assumed powers, granted powers, defined powers, limited powers, divided powers, ambiguous powers, seized powers, illegitimate powers, and so forth. For most people, these are unstated and often unnoticed or obscure kinds of power. But they exist and they matter. Indeed, power is inextricably linked to liberty, although not to be confused with liberty itself. Power determines if there's too much liberty, such as anarchy, or too little liberty, such as tyranny, depending on how power is exercised, who exercises it, and if it's bound to human rights. The American Revolution is an important and obvious example of power properly pursued and exercised, the point of which was to promote individual and societal liberty, including by means of representative, limited, divided government. That is, ordered liberty. Conversely, autocrats of every stripe and in all ages have exploited liberty to empower themselves at the expense of the liberty of others. Indeed, one's use of liberty this way, to expand one's own power, to diminish, if not denude, the liberty of others, is in a real sense a paradox. And it is a cancer that apparently metastasizes over time within democracies. And so I will get into this issue throughout the book of the rise and fall of democracies, of autocracy, why that happens, the use of power, how that happens, the different methodologies and tools that are used to push a society in one direction or another, and how that affects each and every one of you. To be clear, then, even the most wisely conceived nation-states, mindful of man's abuse of power, and established with the intent of curbing and restraining that power, seem to fail in the end. Gone are Athens and Rome, numerous lesser societies. Democracies struggle against the centralization of power almost from the moment they are hatched. And I go on much more. Later in the chapter, the word democracy, like the word liberty, is frequently used as a rhetorical weapon to deceive the true intentions and conceal the real nature of its abusers. Again, these behaviors and tactics are not exclusive to tyrants and autocracies. Indeed, it's a real and growing threat in Western societies, as they increasingly centralize power in the name of unlimited egalitarian and so-called righteous causes: environmental justice, economic justice, social justice, equity, reparations, and so forth and so on, which require and in fact demand the centralization of power to supposedly ameliorate the perceived, claimed, and in some cases manufactured societal maladies, the final resolution of which are not only impossible, but are not necessarily intended to be solvable. And I go into some length into that. Again, I wrote this for you, and I wrote it for our times. And I came up with these two concepts of negative power and positive power. Negative power and positive power. Chapter 2 is negative power. Negative power is power that is exercised by force or other less obvious coercive means. Among its purposes is to limit individual liberty and identity and sovereignty. In its most aggressive form, and when exercised by a faction, cabal, or government, both autocratic and authoritarian, for example, communist regimes, fascistic regimes, terrorist quasi-states, the people are treated as servants to the proclaimed cause, and those exercising power rather than the other way around. Its purpose is to devour and control society, not serve it. Therefore, it must denude individuals of their free will, self-worth, aspirations, development, progress, and human spirit, and control the society generally through the exercise of concentrated, centralized, unchallenged, and ubiquitous power. It is critical to restrict speech and debate, manipulate language, and manufacture new meanings for existing words and new words with self-serving meanings. Propaganda and repetition are the mainstay to controlling communication, and the pursuit of ideas, information, and knowledge are condemned and punished. That is, to dictate thought, conformity, predictability, regurgitation, and obedience are crucial to the lifeblood of the despotic regime. The goal is to create vigorous followers and fanatics for the cause and the regime, not a healthy and robust society of self-sufficient, curious, free-thinking, independent human beings. Now, that's the chapter on negative power, and it's much more extensive. I'm just giving you a little flavor, just a tiny little flavor. And I hope this is really piquing your curiosity, because this is the smartest of audiences. Chapter 3 is on positive power. Positive power starts from an altogether different premise than negative power. God is the sovereign. And through God, his children, that is, the individual and the people, are sovereign. Thus, power properly understood and exercised in the context of government is about the well-being of the ruled, if you will, not the rulers. The people are the sovereign, not the governing authority, and importantly, the belief in God-given eternal truths, natural law, and unalienable rights are the basis of a moral and virtuous society that transcends any ruling class. I actually wrote that like 6 months ago. One's approach to life and role in society involves practices, decisions, values, and beliefs that together form one's life philosophy, which result from learned, cognitive, reactionary, experiential, or even instinctive thought processes, and significantly, faith. Faith is a vital, if not the imperative influence in the life of the individual, a nation, and even in countries that are said to be secular and formally or institutionally disclaim and seek to invalidate faith, including by indoctrination and force. And of course, faith, as preached and practiced by certain religious or religious leaders, now and in the past, have been used by despots and despotic regimes and other autocrats for power, that is, to brutalize, destroy, and kill. So I get into this, and I'll take you through this journey with me, Judaism and Christianity, and I focus a lot on Marxism, which claims to reject faith altogether. Basically, it replaces itself as a faith, and Islamism, which might be controversial, but it shouldn't be. And so I do a dive into that. And so we better understand what it is, what we're up against when it comes to Qatar and Iran and Saudi Arabia and Hamas and all the rest of them, and how Western societies and democracies, including ours, including our politicians, are not able to effectively confront them because they don't really understand them. You will understand them, and you will understand them a lot through this book. And so it has an absolute immediate import. Chapter 4 is on language. Language. Language has many purposes, of course, I write, but at its core, language is about communication. And there are many types of communication and many purposes for it as well. And then I write, I will organize them into two basic categories, the power of language and the power over language. Again, this distinction has been discussed over the ages and in recent times in an infinite number of ways. That said, I shall use them here to make certain fundamental points, understanding that they are distinguishable in significant ways. That is, the power of language and the power over language. Think about that. Sounds simple, right? Well, one is about freedom and the other one's about tyranny. The pursuit and maintenance of negative power requires the utilization of negative techniques of communication, including manipulation, deception, repetition, deceit, concealment, distraction, fear-mongering, in language that is intimidating, self-serving, and orchestrated. And I explain again the difference between these aggressive totalitarian states and our country and democracies. It's used here too. It is an approach that seeks to arouse prejudices and stifle independent thought. I'll give you an example. It's not just by governments, although that's my focus. Whenever I post anything about Qatar or Iran, or post anything about Hamas, post anything about Israel, with a massive flood of Klansman type, neo-Nazi type, Jew haters, and American haters, they flood into my site and they make a zillion comments. Now, a lot of them might be trolls for foreign governments. I got that. I don't even bother reading them anymore. But it is truly horrendous. And so you see the mindset. It is a monstrous mindset of evil, dark people from wherever they are or whomever they are. That's what I mean by negative language, and even more than that. But there's positive language too. I'll give you a couple more. Chapter 5 is on rights. I'll discuss that a little bit more tomorrow. Chapter 6 is on liberty. Again, I'm just giving you, 1% of each chapter, just a little taste of the book. The reason I urge you to order a book early, and I do this with every book, to pre-order a book, is because throughout the process before it's released, and this book will be released in a couple months, July 29, they have these heavy discounts because they're trying to drive sales. And you can take advantage of this. You'll go on there now, there's no discount, but there will be. If you go to Amazon.com, you type in On Power. So you could take advantage of that. The second reason is you get the book immediately upon its release. I'll be right back.
Mark Levin.
Folks, the first 100-plus days of the Trump presidency has been astonishing, and the Heritage Foundation has been keeping track. Americans were sick and tired of the status quo in Washington, D.C., and that had led to a border crisis and an erosion of family life in America. They sent President Trump back to Washington with a mandate to restore American greatness. And the good news is that America's back. Now, if you want to see exactly how he did it, go to heritage.org/Levin. That's heritage.org/Levin. To get your free list of Trump's 100 wins in 100 days. The Heritage Foundation has been counting wins in the first 100 days since President Trump's new administration took office. And I'm sure you can name many of those wins, from taking steps to secure our border to cutting government waste. But the Heritage Foundation has a comprehensive list of the top 100 wins so far. So go to heritage.org/Levin and get your list. That's heritage.org/Levin. Paid for by the Heritage Foundation. I am so excited for you to read this book. I can barely contain myself. Now, again, it comes out July 29, but the reason to pre-order, the benefit is you're going to get a major discount at some point in the next 6 to 8 weeks. That's what they do, because they want to drive sales before the book comes out. So it's good to get in the queue as fast as you can. And number two, you'll be the first to get them. And if they run out of books, and they have before, you will get your book before everybody else. I'm just throwing it out there for you. So that's Amazon.com. Also, it takes a little while for the whole thing to populate. If you go directly to Mark Levin Show on our social sites, the platform, we have a direct link to the book. Or if you go to marklevinshow.com, our website, we have a direct link to the book. But if you go to Amazon and type in On Power, you'll be there a couple of more clicks and so forth to find it, because it hasn't fully populated. This book is so new, it was literally populated on Amazon 90 minutes ago. And I want you to get the best price you can. We've priced it the best way we can. I'm going to be talking about it for the next several months and linking it to events that are taking place. So I don't do book shows. I do shows that include the book, because the book is written to include you and to include events, to be relevant. And this book is more relevant than ever before, because this issue of power is a big, big issue. And I wanted to take it, grab it, wrestle it to the ground, and do it with you. We'll be right back. This segment of the podcast is exclusively sponsored by Pure Talk. Pure Talk offers great coverage and can save your family money on your wireless bill every single month. Go to puretalk.com to find the plan that's right for you. Thank you again for listening, and thank you so much for this sponsorship, Pure Talk.
He's here. He's here. Now, broadcasting from the underground command post, deep in the bowels of a hidden bunker, somewhere under the brick and steel of a nondescript building, we've once again made contact with our leader, Mark Levin.
Hello, America. Mark Levin here. Our number, 877-381-3811, 877-381-3811. For those who are hoping that there's this horrific rift between President Trump and me, you can hope all you want. There isn't. He called me this morning. We had a very nice chat. And, we're simpatico on so many issues. So many issues. But I've made it quite clear. I've made it clear on this program, on TV, and with the president and his people. Hamas cannot be permitted to survive, period. They must be obliterated. And Iran must not get a nuclear weapon, no matter what. These have been my principles since long before Donald Trump ran for any office. Those of you who followed this program over the decades. These are not the principles of warmongers or neocons or whatever the low IQ half-wits and nitwits like to say. The president is constantly being told by third parties and others, constantly contacting him to tell him, don't take any action against Iran under any circumstances. Constantly. I have a different view. America must be protected under all circumstances. Period. The American people must be protected under all circumstances. Period. Future generations who stand on our shoulders must be protected under all circumstances. Period. I call these people fifth column isolationists because they're a dire threat to this country. And the ones that actually have individuals as guests on their programs, who are Holocaust deniers, who are terrorist deniers, who trash our country, who trash our military, I have no desire to candy coat anything about them. Period. And these are people that history will deal with in a very, very harsh way. But history comes too late to deal with a regime that wants a nuclear weapon and wants the intercontinental, I stress, intercontinental ballistic missiles to deliver them. We cannot be the generation that ushers in nuclear weapons. And this has been my point to the president, my point behind this microphone, and it always will be. If I wasn't Jewish, if I was Christian, or a Muslim, or Buddhist, or Hindu, or an atheist, or an agnostic, or a deist, or whatever, my view would be exactly the same. I'm an American, a red-blooded American. If people have arguments why it's okay for Iran to get a nuclear weapon, or it's okay to enter into a deal that they feel will last for decades or more after the president leaves, then let's hear it. Let's hear it. What is the argument? I don't want to hear fear-mongering and scaremongering. I don't want to hear sloganeering like Marxists. I want to hear the argument. There is no argument because they don't make it. There's no argument because they don't make it. So I am more than open to hear it. There's nothing radical or extreme about the view I espouse here. As a matter of fact, the vast majority of American people agree. They don't want Iran to get a nuclear weapon. The vast majority of the American people agree. Terrorists not only kill people, they'll sign anything because they have no intention of honoring it. And in Iran, that's exactly what they've done for 15 years. So my view is as mainstream as it gets. It's historically rational as it gets. It's these people who think they're reinventing or inventing a brand new foreign policy and national policy who demonstrate time and again that they know absolutely nothing, and they know nothing about the enemy. Nothing about the enemy whatsoever. I was very pleased to see the release of a young man, Edan Alexander, who is dual citizen of America and Israel. And, of course, Qatar was behind Hamas releasing him. Doesn't really matter as long as he's released. But they released an American Israeli, nobody else. Qatar is a very, very evil, dangerous regime. It's a tiny country. It's got 300,000 people, but it's got trillions of dollars worth of oil. And it spends that money buying politicians, buying law firms, buying lawyers. It spends that money buying athletic teams, creating entire new sporting events. It spends that money buying nice suits and ties. So when they come around in the United States, they blend right into the society. While they're funding Hamas, they funded October 7th. While they're funding the Taliban, they funded the Taliban to kill American soldiers. While they have alliance with Iran, such a deep alliance that even the Saudis are disgusted by Qatar, and they run Al Jazeera, which is a propaganda operation. And they've poured tens of billions of dollars into our country to destroy our colleges and universities. Our colleges and universities, almost everyone, with a few exceptions, have been destroyed. And Qatar and Communist China have done that, and Qatar leads the way. Qatar has conquered much of Europe. It's conquered France. It's conquered Britain with its money, with its front organizations. That's Qatar. These are facts. Absolute facts. I can't justify who does business with them, who doesn't do business with them. It's of both parties. It's of all kinds of people. But Qatar is an evil, terror-supporting, terrorist regime. The reason why there are hostages in Gaza is because of Qatar. The reason why Hamas has been able to build tunnels and is in power is because of Qatar. The reason why there's all this talk about a ceasefire so Hamas can survive and not be obliterated, and they're on the cusp of being obliterated, is because of Qatar and Qatar's influence in our country and Qatar's influence in international countries, and they spread their money around. Enormous sums of it. That's what Qatar is. I've posted a few more recent reports about Qatar, if you'd like to look, on my social sites. I encourage you to look, if you can't read the whole thing, at least page through them. This is called information. This is called knowledge. This is called facts. I even find, we don't look anymore, in the comments section that we have people coming in defending Qatar against me, defending Qatar against Israel, accusing Israel of 9/11, and so forth and so on. I've never seen such hate for our country, for Jews, for Israel, for Americans, as I see right now. And this is being funded by Qatar and Communist China. Some of these people who claim to be influencers are on the payroll. They've received millions and millions of dollars, if not directly from these foreign countries, through intermediaries. Or they receive millions and millions of dollars from individuals who are sympathizers with Qatar and Saudi Arabia and countries of that ilk. Check it out. It's all on the internet. And so they bring these people on for interviews. They bring on comedians to give history about Nazi Germany, make excuses for Hitler while they're trashing Churchill. It's a poison. It's a poison. I'm not going to buckle to it. I'm not going to bow to it. In fact, the more they attack, the more I will respond with fury. Period. I'm not going to hide my views about terrorist regimes. I'm not going to hide my views about a country that shouts death to America 4,000 times a day, teaches its kids to say death to America, holds the vast majority of its population under a police state. They've twice tried to overthrow Iran. These are the Persian people. They're a good people. They're smart people. And right now they live in a police state. When people say they want to use nuclear power for domestic energy, no, they don't. They don't give a damn if they're people eater. They don't. When they say we can resolve the nuclear deal so Iran's economy can grow and so forth and so on, that's not why it works in Iran. It's not a democracy. It's not a capitalist society. It is a Marxist, Islamist, centralized, iron-fisted police state. And when you read my book, by the way, having nothing to do with some of what I just said, but you'll understand the mindset of the Islamists, because I spent some time on this. And yes, you need to have some guts to write it, because they put out their little hits on people and their little threats about people. But I want you to read it. I want you to be aware of what's going on here. We used to have a rule that we don't negotiate with terrorists. They're on our terrorist watch list, Hamas. Qatar should be on our terrorist watch list. We ought to be removing our military base from Qatar. There are many others. I mean, the UAE, Bahrain, other countries in the Middle East. You know, Qatar gave $5 million to the Medal of Honor Museum. This is how they buy their way in. Medal of Honor Museum, where Qatar has funded terrorism that has killed and maimed Americans, including soldiers. I'm not going to sit here after almost a quarter of a century, you and me speaking the truth, sharing information with each other, and cover up for this terrorist regime. Why the hell should I do that? I'm not going to. And I'm not going to sit here and trash the state of Israel so I can prove that I'm not a Jew. Israel shouldn't be trashed whether you're Jewish or not Jewish. It's a country that wants to survive. It's a country that is a democracy of sorts, but the courts are taking over just like in our country. But it doesn't attack its neighbors unless it's attacked. Our Holy Land is there if you're Jewish and Christian. You can touch it, you can feel it, you can see it. Our Bible talks about the Messiah. As Pastor Hagee tells me, look, Jewish or Christian, a Messiah will return. Either we're right or you're right, but we want the Messiah to return. Yes, exactly. That's right. There'd be no Christianity without Judaism. And I fear there'd be no Judaism left in many parts of the world without our brothers and righteous Christians. We are attached at the hip. And we don't impose our faith on anybody. On anybody. We just want to live in peace, even in the most diverse societies on the face of the earth. That's not the same with the Islamists. And I, again and again, explain there's a difference between Muslims and Islamists. That's not what the way the Islamists think. That's not their mindset. They're extraordinarily dangerous. That's why they have suicide bombers. That's why they fly planes in the buildings. They're ready to go. On their terms, of course, not on ours. And nobody like that can get a nuclear weapon. Nobody. And if people with microphones and videos in their face don't understand it, you should stop listening to them and stop watching them. This is a fundamental issue. The logic is elemental. It's elemental. There's really nothing to debate. If you believe in freedom, family, if you believe in the United States of America and the West, these are throwbacks to the 7th century. They're barbaric, primitive ideology. If you're prepared to give that quarter, or to give that a voice in radio or podcasting or videotape or whatever it is, you're evil too. But as Rush used to say, follow the money. Rush would be standing with me, and I would be standing with him right now. Rush loved Israel, and he loved Benjamin Netanyahu. He told you that on multiple occasions. He certainly told me. This would be a no-brainer for him. No-brainer. No nukes for Iran, and Hamas has to be blown off the face of the earth. No equivocation, no halfway. That's been tried, and it's failed. That's it. That's it. Rush would be standing right with me as I would be with him. Because he said these things already. I'll be right back.
Mark Levin.
Don't get suckered into the same old free phone game by Big Wireless that comes with a lot of fine print, like requiring you to sign up for 4 lines plus activation fees, plus. And the end of the day, you've paid for that free phone 3 times over. Pure Talk is my sponsor, my wireless company. They have a much better offer. With a qualifying plan of just $35 a month, you can get a brand new Samsung Galaxy A26 for free. Now, this phone is virtually indestructible. Gorilla Glass captures beautiful wide-angle photos with next-generation camera lenses. All you need to do is switch to Pure Talk. For just $35 a month, you get unlimited talk, text, 15 gigs of data, more than you'll ever need, with mobile hotspot, all on one of America's most dependable 5G networks. Go to puretalk.com/Levin to make the switch. Again, that's puretalk.com/LEVIN to claim your free Samsung Galaxy with qualifying plan when you switch to Pure Talk. Wireless by Americans for Americans. When you think about it, America, it's kind of perverse, is it not, when so many of you and all of us want to protect ourselves from more terrorist attacks? I mean, for God's sakes, we lost over 2,000 people in one day. Really, in a couple hours. And the weapons are getting bigger and bigger and more powerful. Whether they're nuclear, whether they're chemical, whether they're biological. I mean, for crying out loud. We have every right to self-defense. Basic self-defense. You don't have to wait to be shot between the eyes to stop the person who plans to shoot you between the eyes. It's basic self-defense. Even under our law, you're not viewed as the aggressor. You're not viewed as the crime monger. But we don't want to be victims. We're the United States of America. So propaganda, which is used by Marxists and Islamists, which is used by all kinds of people, it's used to deceive and to confuse you, the American people. So the people who are saying, look at what this regime wants to do to us, this handful of Islamists, these fundamentalists, look what they say they want to do day in and day out. Look at what they've done. For somebody to call you and me warmongers is the gravest lie that can be told at a time of such incredible significance for the survival of our country against a nuclear-armed terrorist regime. Those people should be shamed, they should be denounced, they should be rejected in the strongest terms. I'll be right back. Don't get suckered into the same old free phone game by Big Wireless that comes with a lot of fine print, like requiring you to sign up for 4 lines plus activation fees, plus. And the end of the day, you've paid for that free phone 3 times over. Pure Talk is my sponsor, my wireless company. They have a much better offer. With a qualifying plan of just $35 a month, you can get a brand new Samsung Galaxy A26 for free. Now, this phone is virtually indestructible. Gorilla Glass captures beautiful wide-angle photos with next-generation camera lenses. All you need to do is switch to Pure Talk. For just $35 a month, you get unlimited talk, text, 15 gigs of data, more than you'll ever need, with mobile hotspot, all on one of America's most dependable 5G networks. Go to puretalk.com/Levin to make the switch. Again, that's puretalk.com/LEVIN to claim your free Samsung Galaxy with qualifying plan when you switch to Pure Talk. Wireless by Americans for Americans.
Mark Levin, the voice of America. Dial in now at 877-381-3811.
In hour 3, albeit quite briefly, I'm going to educate you about a guy by the name of Isaac Shore, who works at Mediaite, and how that organization, headed by Dan Abrams, is developing more and more yellow journalists whose purpose is just to create havoc, to mislead the American people, to lie. I want to read something to you from our friends at Memory, MEMRI.org. I strongly encourage you to bookmark this site and to visit it multiple times a day. They've been around for 25 years. They have enormous integrity, these people. And they not only provide you with research and so forth, but they provide you with the English version of what's being said about you and what people want to do to you who speak Farsi, who speak Arabic, and God knows what else they speak. And I want you to listen very, very carefully, especially in New York City, but the whole country. The 1993 World Trade Center bombing. That bombing. At 12:30 p.m. on February 26, 1993, an al-Qaeda terrorist cell, led by al-Qaeda's Ramzi Ahmad Yusuf, drove a Ryder rental van concealing a 1,200-pound urea nitrate bomb into the B-2 level of the underground parking garage beneath the North Tower of the World Trade Center complex in Lower Manhattan. They've always wanted to take these towers down. Yusuf and his accomplices parked the van there, lit the delayed fuse of the bomb, and used a second car to depart the scene. Shortly afterwards, 18 minutes later, 12:18 p.m., right in the middle of the afternoon, a powerful explosion tore through the lower levels of the building, creating a crater 150 feet wide and several stories deep beneath the North Tower. 2 of the bombers, Ramzi Yusuf and Yabadabadu, fled the U.S. that night. 5 years later, in 1998, Yusuf was tried and convicted in absentia for his role in the World Trade Center bombing and the Bojinka bombing plot that targeted 12 U.S. 747 airplanes. Yusuf was sentenced to life in prison plus 240 years for the 1993 WTC bombing. He was found responsible for the murder of 6 people and injuring over 1,000 others. This is what we're dealing with, America. During his sentencing hearing, he told the judge, "Yes, I am a terrorist and proud of it," quote unquote. He's serving his sentence at the ADX Federal Supermax Prison in Florence, Colorado, where he's kept in solitary confinement for nearly 24 hours a day. Now, in his book, Against All Enemies, Richard Clarke recounted his service as National Security Advisor to President Clinton in efforts by the American government to track down KSM, to bring him to the U.S. and put him on trial for the WTC bombings. You might remember KSM, who was behind the attack on the towers. The mastermind. Yes. Following the discovery that KSM had received secure refuge in Qatar, Clarke expressed his distrust of the Qataris because they had illegally acquired U.S.-produced Stinger surface-to-air missiles, Stinger surface-to-air missiles, or FIM-92s, are man-portable air defense system manpads that have the capability of, quote, destroying low-flying targets such as airplanes, helicopters, UAVs. At the time, Stinger missiles were considered an advanced technology which the U.S. wanted to prevent from falling into the hands of the Iranian regime, as well as those of terrorist organizations. You see, back in 1990s or so, we didn't even want them to have Stingers. Now we're supposed to sit back and let them get a nuclear weapon. And if you dare to raise your head and say no, you're attacked. Clark described the Qataris as being duplicitous over how they had obtained Stinger missiles. They had bought them in Afghanistan but refused to admit it, and their later attempts to engage in diplomacy with Iran at a time when Tehran was engaged in anti-U.S. operations throughout the region. Reports from 1988 indicated that the Qataris had secretly purchased 13 of the missiles and most likely had bought them from the Iranians. The missiles were reportedly part of a CIA shipment of 20 Stingers that Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard seized in June 1987. Taken in a raid on a convoy of the Afghan Mujahideen supported by the U.S. U.S. experts identified Qatar's illegal missile purchase via a video of Qatari military parade, but Qatari defense officials refused to reveal how the missiles were acquired. In June 1988, then Secretary of State Richard Murphy lodged a formal protest over Qatar's refusal to return the Stinger missiles to the United States. And Murphy also demanded access to the missiles, which constituted a threat to American forces in Afghanistan, in order to check their serial numbers to find out who sold them to Qatar. Now, former NSC Director Clark also expressed deep concerns over the Qatari government and whether they would cooperate in KCM's rendition to the U.S. for the World Trade Center attack. He recounted that the Counterterrorism Security Group of the United States had directed Peter Theros, then U.S. ambassador to Qatar, to seek the Emir's Minister of Palace Affairs approval for the FBI to arrest KSM. Although the Qataris claim that only a few senior officials knew about our plan, Khalid Sheikh Mohammed learned of it and fled the country ahead of the FBI arrest team's arrival in 1996. Why? Because he was tipped off by the Qataris. That's why. According to the 9/11 Commission report, a Qatari official warned KSM of the impending extradition request, and a Qatari passport was reportedly provided to him by the government of that country for his escape. The 9/11 Commission report further notes, quote, KSM evaded capture and stayed at large to play a central role in what would be the 9/11 terrorist attacks. It describes KSM as going on to engage in hatching and planning an extraordinary array of terrorist schemes. These ideas included conventional car bombings, political assassinations, aircraft bombings, hijackings, reservoir poisonings, and ultimately the planes that flew into our Twin Towers, into the Pentagon, and into the central Pennsylvania. He was the plotter, and he got away because the Qataris helped him get away and gave him a passport. You got that? That's the truth. This is all at memory.org, 1995. Listen to this. The plot to assassinate Pope John Paul II. As part of the Bojinka operation, that's Russia, KSM and Ramzi Youssef plotted the assassination of Pope John Paul II on his visit to the Philippines. In January 1995, Youssef and his accomplice, Abdul Hakam Murad, were mixing bomb-making material in their apartment in Manila, which was located 200 yards from the papal nunciature, the embassy of the Vatican in the Philippines. While they were mixing chemicals, billows of smoke emanated from their apartment and the police were called. Both ran outside, but Youssef told Murad to retrieve important documents from the apartment, leading to Murad's arrest on January 6, 1995. In the department, police discovered bomb-making manuals, pipe bombs, the plans for the Bojinka operation on Youssef's laptop computer. Additionally, they were shocked to discover detailed Roman Catholic vestments designed to resemble those worn by the Pope's entourage, as well as maps tracing the public schedule of the Pope's visit. The police also found pipe bombs, which they believed were intended to be concealed beneath a road in order to assassinate the Pope. Qatar. September 11, 2001. In a 2007 court appearance at the U.S. military court in Guantanamo Bay, KSM and his lawyer presented a formal confession to the 9/11 tribunal, admitting his central role in the al-Qaeda terrorist attack, taking responsibility for 31 other terrorist attacks worldwide. KSM declared, "I hereby admit and affirm without duress that I was responsible participant, principal planner, trainer, financier, executor in all these attacks." He proudly characterized the 9/11 attacks, which resulted in the murder of 2,977 people, as, quote, Holy Tuesday Plains operation. He described himself as al-Qaeda's military operational commander for all foreign operations around the world, under the direction of Sheikh Osama bin Laden and Dr. Ayman al-Zawahiri. Providing details of expanded plans for mass casualty terrorist attacks, KSM further described himself as being directly in charge of managing and following up on the cell for production of biological weapons, such as anthrax and others, following up on dirty bomb operations on American soil. This is what we're dealing with. On 9/11, 4 U.S. commercial jetliners, you know the story. This guy, prior to his ability to plan 9/11, escaped from the FBI because the Qatari government tipped him off, gave him plans to get out, and gave him a passport. You got that? And gave him a passport. And there's so much more I could tell you. But you can go yourself to memory.org, memri.org. Qatar today has destroyed Harvard, has destroyed Columbia, has destroyed hundreds of our universities and colleges by spending billions of dollars on brainwashing, on propaganda, on riots in the streets. It was Qatar that funded Hamas to the tune of almost $2 billion so they could build those tunnels. It was Qatari money that was used to attack on October 7th. Qatar. And they've bought our politicians, Democrats, Republicans, all branches of government. They've bought law firms and lawyers and companies and on and on and on. This is Qatar. These damnable fools, with their podcast platforms, their so-called influencers, with their subscription platforms, who keep trying to tell the President of the United States, don't deal with Iran, leave it alone. It's the Jews, it's Israel, it's Levin. These damnable little bastards. They're going to get us all killed. I'll be right back.
Mark Levin.
Don't get suckered into the same old free phone game by Big Wireless that comes with a lot of fine print, like requiring you to sign up for 4 lines plus activation fees, plus. And the end of the day, you've paid for that free phone 3 times over. Pure Talk is my sponsor, my wireless company. They have a much better offer. With a qualifying plan of just $35 a month, you can get a brand new Samsung Galaxy A26 for free. Now, this phone is virtually indestructible. Gorilla Glass captures beautiful wide-angle photos with next-generation camera lenses. All you need to do is switch to Pure Talk. For just $35 a month, you get unlimited talk, text, 15 gigs of data, more than you'll ever need, with mobile hotspot, all on one of America's most dependable 5G networks. Go to puretalk.com/Levin to make the switch. Again, that's puretalk.com/LEVIN to claim your free Samsung Galaxy with qualifying plan when you switch to Pure Talk. Wireless by Americans for Americans. Don't forget, you can listen to all 3 hours of this program whenever you want, however you want. If you choose to listen directly, you go to Mark Levin Show in YouTube. Boom, free, there we are. Mark Levin Show in YouTube. Or you can go to youtube.com at Mark Levin Show. Also, you can just listen to the podcast. You go to your favorite podcast platform and search for Mark Levin Show. That's it, Mark Levin Show. It's all free. It's all easy to use. We have a fantastic team that puts all these things together and makes them work beautifully. Same with the program here, led by my man, Rich Cementa. Now, this is a reminder. You can go to Amazon.com right now. We link to it directly on Twitter, on True Social, on all our social sites. Or you can go there directly and dig a little bit to find it. Or go to our website, marklevinshow.com, which has everything. The book is called On Power. On Power. The earlier you order, the sooner you'll get it when it comes out. And I want you to take advantage of the discounts, which tend to be very significant, during the course of the pre-ordering before the book comes out on July 29th. On Power. We'll dip into a little bit more of it tomorrow. I think what I'll dip into is the part on Marxism, Islamism, a little bit of Judaism and Christianity. Just so people understand the mindset of the West versus the mindset of the Islamists and the Marxists. Because it's very, very important to understand. And there are other aspects of the book too. But again, I can give you just a tiny little taste for two reasons. Number one, I don't want to do this all day on radio. I mean, the book will be available and you can read it or listen to the audio. Number two, I am prohibited from doing it anyway by the publisher, as you can understand. And by the way, my publisher is great. It's Simon & Schuster Threshold Editions. They're absolutely terrific. I'll be right back.
He's here. Now, broadcasting from the underground command post, deep in the bowels of a hidden bunker, somewhere under the brick and steel of a nondescript building, we've once again made contact with our leader, Mark Levin.
Hello, America. Mark Levin here. Our number, 877-381-3811, 877-381-3811. President Trump had a press conference over an hour today before he left for the Middle East. And we should dip into a little bit of this. Apparently, a big deal, at least for a 90-day period of time, was made with Communist China. Cut one, go.
In addition, yesterday we achieved a total reset with China after productive talks in Geneva. Both sides now agreed to reduce the tariffs imposed after April 2nd to 10% for 90 days as negotiators continue on the largest structural issues. And I want to tell you that a couple of things. First of all, that doesn't include the tariffs that are already on, that are our tariffs, and it doesn't include tariffs on cars, steel, aluminum, things such as that, or tariffs that may be imposed on pharmaceuticals, because we want to bring the pharmaceutical businesses back to the United States, and they're already starting to come back now based on tariffs.
You know, that's an interesting one, pharmaceuticals. We talked about this even before the president did this with the pharmaceutical companies. And so I'm going to play for you what he said about that, and then I want to discuss it with you a little bit. Let's go to cut 5, Rich. Listen to this one. Go ahead.
So for the first time in many years, we'll slash the cost of prescription drugs, and we will bring fairness to America. Drug prices will come down by much more, really, if you think 59. If you think of a drug that is sometimes 10 times more expensive, it's much more than the 59%. You know, it depends on the way you want to analyze it, but in one way you could analyze it that way. But between 59 and 80, and I guess even 90%. So when I worked so hard in the first term, and if I got prices down, I remember I was the only one to ever get prices down for a full year, but I'd get them down like 2%, and I thought it was like a big deal. Well, we're getting them down 60, 70, 80, 90%, but actually more than that if you think about it in the way mathematically.
Now, I'm not sure how this is going to work or what's happening if this is imposed like an industrial policy. But if we're trying to get pharmaceutical companies to come back to America and we're putting arbitrary prices on them, which is something we blamed Kamala Harris for, they're not going to come back to the country no matter how high the tariffs are. They'll just sell to other countries. So I'm not sure how this works. I'm not a big fan of price controls and the imposition of prices. Now, one of the reasons that certain drugs cost more here than they do, say, in Canada or Britain or so forth, it's not complicated. These pharmaceutical companies spend a fortune in the lab with scientists to try and find drugs that will improve the quality of life or save lives where drugs don't currently exist. We should be very happy about that, because in most of the rest of the world, including the West, these socialist regimes that have universal so-called healthcare, which is socialist healthcare, they don't invent a lot of new drugs. So what happens is these pharmaceutical companies, more times than not, they don't make anything on a drug because it doesn't get to market. Once they feel they've invented something that works after often 15, 20 years, they have to go through the regulatory process. And they have to get multiple levels of approval from the FDA, among others. So they're not just inventing stuff, jacking up the price. Look at this. They have a lot of scientists, they have a lot of people that work for them to try and develop these drugs to help save your life and so forth. And we just assume they're available all the time. But somebody has to figure it out. So I don't use these pejoratives like big pharma. That's Marxist socialist bullcrap. As I said the other day, big pharma. Well, how many people's lives has big pharma saved? I'm no special pleader for big pharma. I'm explaining how the economy works. So if you put 59 or 90% or whatever it is, bring down the price of this drug or that drug, and you do it, I don't know what it's based on. I said, I just don't know. Well, they're going to have less money to invent new drugs, and they're not going to invent new drugs because they just, they can't squeeze turnips and find money available to do what they need to do. They have large workforces. They have the top of the line scientists and nutritionists and so forth, and they got to figure these things out. They have to pay enormous amount of sums to trial lawyers who bring all kinds of suits against them. It's an expensive business. So why does a drug cost more here than in one of these socialist countries? It's very simple. Because here, where they invent most of them, where they get patents for most of them, that only last 20 years is my recollection, 18 or 20 years, that's where they make the money. After that, many of these drugs, not all, but many are available over the counter. And so the price goes way down. They have to make the money back. They have to pay their workforce. They have to pay more R&D and investment on other drugs. Like they've been spending tens of billions of dollars on some cure for Alzheimer's that has eluded them for decades. But they've still spent tens of billions of dollars. So in these other countries, what they do is they copy the drug. They steal it. And they sell it for pennies on the dollar. They steal it. In other words, they'll copy the drug, make some minor alteration, and then say our drug's different. That's what these socialist regimes do. They don't invent as many new drugs as they steal, essentially, the patents through the back door. And so that's why a drug in Canada or Britain or France or whatever will cost pennies on the dollar, but not here. So it's not that our companies are ripping anybody off. It's that they're being ripped off. And to me, it seems that that should be the focus. That should be the focus. And again, these names, Big Pharma, and why do we talk like Marxists? Why do we do that? I don't believe the president used that phrase, but I've heard so-called conservative members of Congress on this show use that phrase, and I even challenged them. So I just wanted to point that out. This is basically price controls. And they could have a reverse effect. That is, there won't be as many new cancer drugs. There won't be as many new diabetes drugs. There won't be as many new, heart disease drugs or kidney drugs or whatever, because they're not only not going to have the funds to do it, but they're not going to have the motivation to do it. So when the president gave us an example, this big fat guy, friend of his, said he's a little neurotic. It was funny. He's in Britain. He says, why did I pay whatever amount for this, and yet in America it's $1,300? Well, that's why. That's what happened. And that's what's still happening. So there is another side to this. It's not just, quote-unquote, big pharma ripping you off. And I explained the other day, the reason there is, quote-unquote, big pharma or relatively large corporations involved in this is because they need to be able to have and raise the capital to pursue their investigatory activities and to develop these drugs and to go through the regulatory process. It costs billions of dollars to bring a drug, any drug, to the market. Usually tens of billions of dollars. And again, they fail way more often than they succeed. Look, I don't want to get into specifics. I've hinted at it before. I have a family member who has Alzheimer's. I get the Alzheimer's Association email every week about this large pharmaceutical company tried this. It failed on the second trial. They tried another thing. It failed on the third trial, the last. Or they couldn't get it to trial. And they've been working on it for 9 years, 8 years, 17 years, 7 years. And it comes up empty. And so you got to be careful, sloganeering aside, all the rest of it aside, you got to be careful that the market isn't so thoroughly disrupted or destroyed that we don't get new drugs, new life-saving drugs. Let's be honest. When you're sick, you want to know what drugs are available to help you. When a family member is sick or when they're on the deathbed, you want to know, is there anything? What can we do? Is there anything we can do? Well, who do you turn to? Quote-unquote, big pharma, right? Who do you turn to for cheap gasoline and oil? Quote-unquote, big oil. I'm not into this sloganeering. Sloganeering is what the Marxists do, the leftists do, the Democrats do. We'll be right back.
Mark Levin.
Folks, I want to give you an example of one of the problems we're having in journalism, especially with certain young people, not all young people, of course. And I want to use an example as a gentleman by the name of Isaac Shore. I don't know him. He writes for Mediaite. Mediaite is a very sort of perverse platform. They don't actually come up with anything on their own. They have wildly dishonest headlines. They're very anti-Fox, anti-conservative talk radio. They'll flop in an attack on a Democrat here and there, but their ideology is clear. They absolutely hate Donald Trump. It's sort of Media Matters, but started by Dan Abrams. The whole format looks like one big case of plagiarism, but that's up to them. So this guy, Isaac Shore, I looked at his resume as best as I could online. Didn't memorize it, but he seemed to do all the right things up till now. He had been with National Review, very reputable, even though we can disagree with them. I was a contributing editor to National Review for many years. The great Bill Buckley, of course, headed it. Rich Lowry is terrific. He heads it now. He is with the Fund for Conservative Studies. I believe he's the Robert Novak fellow there. Robert Novak was a friend of mine, good friend of mine, when I first came to Washington, D.C. in the Reagan administration. And the organization, which he's a fellow, is an organization that I also attended, went to Georgetown, and I and the current head of the organization, Roger Ream, we graduated at the top of the class. He's affiliated with that. He writes pieces for the New York Post from time to time. We love the New York Post on this program. It's a fantastic paper. But he seems to think, he left National Review for Mediaite, that he's advancing his career by advancing a very cheap form of media. Not journalism, but cheap form of media. So I said about the envoy to the Middle East, I posted that when he was using the neocon element, as he phrased it, to attack those who happen to disagree with him, because you know you're not allowed to, that he was sounding like the fifth column isolationists. So the headline of that piece became that I called him a traitor. I said he sounded like fifth column isolationists. So why do they have to interpret what I say? We all understand English around here. And he said in his piece that I essentially called the envoy a traitor. Essentially called him a traitor. But I didn't call him a traitor. I said what I said. This isn't the first time this kid's done that. He tries to create a rift between Trump and me. It didn't happen. It's not going to happen. That's not my point. My point is, this is illustrative of the problem we have. This kid had good teachers. He had good mentors going to these various institutions. And now he's a grifter, seeking hits. And he poses as the in-house conservative, one or two of them, at a website that has almost no women, as far as I know, has almost no minorities. It's basically a fraternity, if you will, without the college. And it is a grotesque disservice to the people who read it because they don't care about that. It's really aimed at a niche. It's aimed at a niche. And that's what Dan Abrams does. He flies above it all. Mr. Lawyer, it's family filled with lawyers. Ask him anything. He'll seem very scholarly. Well, at the same time, he's behind the most loathsome cable TV shows and one of the most loathsome websites, this Mediaite, which I call Mediocreite, which is basically Media Matters without the Soros money. I don't know who funds them. I don't much care. And so this guy, Isaac Shore, this is what he writes, that I essentially called the guy a traitor. That word essentially is a key word, is it not, Mr. Producer? So the entire purpose of the piece was to mislead everybody and anybody who read it, to attack somebody he doesn't even know, but to make cred with Dan Abrams, Mediaite, and the left, even though he poses as somebody on the right. So he's already destroyed his career. Because a guy like me is going to make sure that he's known. He's now no longer hiding in the rough. He's open and notorious. And he'll keep doing it, and I'll keep pointing it out. At this essentially white male fraternity that, by the way, attacked Trump for his DEI policies. In other words, typical elitist liberals. That's what they are. Typical elitist liberals. But this guy sure tries to move between and among and between and among, but you can't. You either have ethics, you either have principles, or you don't. And he is neither. So I just wanted to point that out. We'll keep an eye on it. We'll keep an eye on it. Let's grab a few calls here. All right. Let us go to Vince, Albuquerque, New Mexico, the great KKOB. KKOB is a station with a massive signal, 50,000 watts. Great affiliate. Vince, go right ahead, please.
Thank you for taking my call. I was in New York. I'm a retired Vietnam vet. I was in New York State during 9/11, and I can't stand the Hamas and all of them perverts
And by the way, Vince, on my Fox show on Sunday, and I explained to the president, I've explained behind this microphone, the American people hate these terrorists, hate these countries. We don't receive any money from them, whereas some of these grifters do. And if they don't receive it directly from them, they receive support from individuals who support them. That's the great untold story that hasn't been written. Vince, I want to thank you for your service, my brother. I agree with you 100%. We'll be right back.
He's driving the media mad. Mark Levin, call in with your outrage. 877-381-3811.
Quite a battle going on for the nomination on the Republican side for governor, Mr. Producer. Jack Ciattarelli almost won against Murphy. Remember that? Ciccarelli. Well, that's how you pronounce it from Brooklyn, from Philadelphia. It's pronounced Ciccarelli. Is that correct? Rich, is that correct? Chittarelli. Okay. You're almost positive. I don't care how you pronounce it. He's a damn good candidate. And I see Donald Trump endorsed him, and that's not why I'm about to endorse him, although that's okay. I'm going to endorse him, too, because I think he could actually win the governorship. It's a long shot, but he came within an eyelash of beating Murphy over there. He didn't ask for our support, but we will back him as well for the Republican nomination. And I love the way the media writes these things up. You know, he called Trump names in 2015. You know, there was a 2015-2016 primary with a lot of candidates. I mean, J.D. Vance called Trump Hitler. Didn't he, Mr. Producer? Something like that. And Trump called people names and other people, you know, remember the thing with Marco Rubio and the size of the hands? Okay, fine. You go into these battles, and then you're done the battles, and then you take on the Democrats, and you do everything you can to defeat the radical left-wing kook Democrats. And a lot of people, including me, got behind Donald Trump. That's the way it works. So when the media play this game, or some of the kooks out there, you know, in 2016, you know, in 2015... Okay, and Donald Trump was a Democrat once. Am I supposed to hold that against him? Or so was Ronald Reagan. And you should have heard the things they said about Republicans. So it's a stupid game. And Trump knows it's a stupid game, and I know it's a stupid game. It's the game of infantiles. And so I want to endorse him as well. He didn't ask for it, but we need to win that seat, I think. And I think he's got a shot at it. New Jersey's a tough state. I think he's got a shot. You know, I love New Jersey. You know that, Mr. Perdue? The more I'm there, the more I love it. It's got the best delis in the world. Did you know that? I know you're from New York, but I'm sorry. It's got the best delis I've ever, you know, they're great. And they're everywhere. Here in Virginia, they haven't even heard of a deli. They're few and far between. I'm going to get one of these corned beef sandwiches on rye, you know. Look at you funny. The rye bread doesn't taste that. Everything tastes like white bread. Their bagels taste like white bread. Look, I'm not trying to offend. I'm just saying the truth. All right, let's take some more calls. Let's go to Mark, Chico, California. XM Satellite, go right ahead, please.
Mark, what an honor to talk to you tonight.
Thank you.
Very quickly, in 2016, I was not a Trump guy. I was upstairs reading a book. I couldn't make up my mind what I was going to do. You came on and you said you cannot vote for Hillary. I came downstairs, filled out my ballot for Trump. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
You're continuing the good work. I'm a retired lawyer. I find your insights to the Constitution constantly very enlightening. I appreciate that. But today, I want to compliment you on two things. Number one, pushing back against the isolationists in the Republican Party. I don't get that. Kudos to you to continue to articulate how important it is for America to keep our eyesight on Western Europe and our alliances. And most importantly, to today, the big pharma pejorative, as you so accurately assess that, is a much more thorny, if you will, issue. And kudos to you to push back today on how much deeper that goes in terms of costs, research and development, et cetera. And I'll leave it to you, and God bless you, Mark.
Aren't you kind, Mark? Really appreciate it. I don't have any books to give you, but if I had one, I'd give it to you. Try again in about 6 weeks, Mark. God bless you, buddy. We appreciate it very much. I call him as I see him. It's the way it is. Let's go to Adam, Osaka, Japan. Holy moly. I think Adam called us before on the Mark Levin app. Adam, how are you?
I did, Mark. How are you doing today?
I'm all right. How's Japan?
It's early morning here, but I listen to you all the time. We listen to podcasts every day during training, and thank you so much for your support. Been listening to you this is my third Olympic quad, so for a long time.
Oh, wait a minute. I remember you. You're the toboggan guy?
The bobsledder.
The bobsledder,
yeah.
Now, hold on now. Tell everybody what you do.
So I'm the captain of the Israeli bobsled team. It's a group of Druze, if you know the Druze, and Jewish athletes.
Great people.
And we're in line to make the 2026 Olympic Games at the moment.
That's fantastic. Now, people would say, oh, you got to be kidding. Now, the Druze, many of whom live in Israel, are very patriotic people, very hardworking people, very pro-American people, and they're hated by the Islamo-Nazis, too, and they killed many of them about a year or so ago. Am I got that right, Adam?
Exactly right. In fact, a number of my teammates were called to serve in Gaza. They're extremely patriotic and wonderful human beings. I can't speak, higher of them.
You've got the Druze fighting alongside the Jews. You've got Bedouins fighting alongside the Jews. You have Arabs, Israeli Arabs fighting alongside the Jews. People don't realize how diverse that country is when they're running around saying it's apartheid. What's apartheid is what exists in the Arab countries. You're either one type of Muslim or another, and if you're the other type, you are put upon, you are set upon. So people just don't understand how it works over there. Anyway, Adam, Osaka, Japan. Why are you practicing in Osaka, Japan? Maybe I don't understand this.
To be honest, long story short, it's the cheapest cost of living I could find, and we're an unfunded team. So the young is pretty weak, and it's easy to live here.
They smoke a lot over there, don't they?
They smoke like a chimney, and they drink like sailors.
Really?
It's amazing.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
All right. What did you want to say?
A couple of points, if you'll indulge.
Yes.
The first is we can all agree that Reagan would never have tolerated the parading of an American hostage in front of their captors. I think it's an absolute disgrace that this was even considered. I think, I just can't stand that. But the second is I think peace through strength is incompatible with countries demanding a tribute for returning Americans they help abduct.
That was pretty sick, wasn't it? That this kid, this young man, over 500 days, a captive of Hamas, which is funded by its masters in Qatar, as a condition for releasing him, he has to go visit Qatar and thank them for his release. That was pretty sick, don't you think?
It's absolutely appalling. As an Israeli, it's appalling. As someone who was born in the United States, it's appalling. And my fear is that it reflects very poorly on the inability of Western culture to protect its own. Right? It used to be said that a citizen of Rome could pass freely through the world unmolested because the fear of hellfire would rain down on anyone who'd touch them. And we've just lost that deterrent.
Well, look, we have people within our country with platforms who claim to represent all of us and promote the country, who are undermining us, trashing us, and who are effectively, some directly, some indirect, special pleaders for the enemy. It's rather stunning, don't you think?
Oh, we have it in Israel too, Mark.
You do?
I think it's an absolute cancerous sickness. It's the tightness between Marxism and Islamofascism is just becoming greater every day, and it's like a cancer. It eats at it's a moral rot in society.
No, you're quite right. So when are these Olympics? I haven't even been found. Where the hell are they? Are they in L.A. or something that I remember? I'm just trying to remember.
They're They're in 270 days from now in February of 26.
Oh, you're counting every day. You're either looking forward to it or you hate it. What 270 some days?
Mark, it's my last 270 days of a 12-year journey, so I'm counting down but also counting up.
And where is it? In the U.S.?
It's in Cortina, Italy.
Oh, that's not the U.S. Now, are you concerned about security? I'm quite serious about this. Yeah,
so I was in the 2018 Olympic Games, and security was obviously a very big concern for us back then. But nowadays, from everything that we are well aware of, there's two aspects to the security. One is inside the village, and one is outside the village. Since the Munich Games, they've had a very tight security apparatus inside the village, but outside the village, we're highly concerned that, especially with the egregious amount of anti-Semitism and migrant populations which are hostile to Jews in Europe, that stepping outside the village could cause a great deal of harm to Israeli athletes.
It looks like I need to go back and look it up, the name of one of the imams, one of the chief muckety-mucks, who said that they were going to destroy the West through immigration. This whole crusade of a movement from the Middle East to Europe has been intentional. It's had an effect. It's destroyed London and parts of Britain. It's destroyed Paris and parts of France. It's destroying part of our country, including our universities and colleges. It is a horrendous thing, and it just continues. All right, Adam, you call any time, buddy. We love hearing from you in Japan. You take care of yourself. Where's Adam?
Take care. I really appreciate it, Mark.
Take care. All right, bye-bye. All right. What am I doing, Rich? Where am I? We'll be right back.
Mark Levin.
Folks, please don't forget, the earlier you order, the better position you're in. Get your copy of On Power. We have it on my various social sites. We have it at marklevinshow.com, direct links to amazon.com. You have to dig a little bit, but you can get it at amazon.com right now. And what happens is from today to July 29, when it's released, they offer various discounts, significant discounts. And you'll get the biggest discount they wind up offering during that period of time. And you'll be in the queue to get the book first among others. And I really believe this is a book that you're going to enjoy. You're going to learn a ton. It's going to cause you to shake your head. It's also going to cause you to shake your head, not just sideways, but up and down. And I write these books for you, but this is a different book. This is a special book. I took a different topic altogether, even though it applies to everything we live and talk about. On Power. And I think you're going to find it very, very interesting. I know you are. So go to Amazon.com, get your copy today. I know a lot of people want to wait till July 29th. I get it. It's okay. But if it were me, when other books come out, I want to read them, I jump right in, and then it shows up and I get the big discount. So that is my recommendation to you. All right, Mr. Producer, let's see here. You sent me some callers. Hold on now. Let's see here, Richie Rich. All right, I can't find him. Oh, I see. Keith, Panhandle, Florida, the great WFTW. Keith, how are you, sir?
I am well, thank you. It's Chief H. Chief.
Ah, gotcha. Chief. Got it?
Okay. I'm calling on behalf of your former loyal listeners on WFTW. And I'm poking the eye at Cumulus and... all
right, I can't get into this. I don't even know what it's about. I don't get into all this stuff. And that's not why he called. Let's go to Robert, Cheshire, Connecticut. How are you, Robert?
Well, Denali, it's a pleasure to speak with you again. Thank you for taking my call.
Thank you, buddy.
I'm looking forward to hopefully meeting you yet again at Bookends when you have your book signings.
I'll be there.
Outstanding. We're looking forward to it. Met you a few times, and I did also want to apologize to you and the rest of the country for the never held a real job, Senator Chris Murphy. This guy is a clown, showing what non-competition in a one-party state will do. He is not even remotely qualified.
You're so right. I got to go, Robert, because the music starts and I got to dance. But he is a true horrendous individual. We salute our armed forces, police officers, firefighters, emergency personnel, our truckers, the men and women in Ukraine, the men and women in Israel, and you, the American people, the best of the best. God bless you. Go ahead and grab your copy tonight, ladies and gentlemen. It's called On Power. And I'll see you tomorrow.